If I told you that my entire life changed because of a single sentence my mother whispered to me on a rainy night, would you believe me? For 10 whole years, she carried a secret that shaped every decision she made, every rule she set, and every fear she hid. And when she finally told me the truth, I realized I never truly knew her at all. My name is Daniel. I'm 25 now. But this story goes back a decade, back when I thought life was simple, when I believed parents always told the truth, and when I assumed a secret was something you kept for a week, maybe a month, not 10 years. I never imagined my mother was carrying something so heavy that it changed the course of both our lives. This is the story of how I found out. If you're listening right now, comment where you're from and subscribe, because what I'm about to share is something I've never told anyone before. That night, the rain hit our windows like it was trying to force its way inside. I was in my room pretending to study, but actually scrolling through music on my old phone. I heard my mother pacing in the hallway, short, sharp steps. She only walked like that when something was wrong. When she called my name, her voice cracked a little, and that alone made me sit up. My mother never sounded scared. She asked me to come to the living room, and when I did, she wasn't sitting like she normally did. She was standing by the window, gripping the curtains as if she needed support. She looked at me with eyes full of something I couldn't recognize back then. Fear mixed with relief, as if she had finally run out of time to stay silent. Before I could ask what was happening, she said my name softly, almost too softly. "Daniel, do you trust me?" It wasn't a normal question, not from her. My mother was the most predictable person I knew, the type who believed the truth always won. So hearing her hesitate felt wrong. I nodded, unsure. She took a deep breath and told me to sit down. "There's something I should have told you years ago," she said. Her voice trembled, and for a moment, she couldn't look directly at me. I didn't know it yet, but that question, "Do you trust me?" was the beginning of a revelation she had avoided for a decade. And for the first time in my life, I saw her not as a mother, but as someone afraid of losing everything. She disappeared into her bedroom and came back holding a small wooden box. I recognized it instantly. It was the box she never let me touch, the one she always kept locked away. Growing up, I imagined there were old letters inside, or maybe photos from before I was born. Nothing dangerous, nothing life-changing. But when she placed the box between us, her hands shaking, I realized this wasn't some sentimental object. Whatever was inside had controlled her for years. She sat across from me, folding her hands tightly. "I've protected you from this," she whispered, "but I can't protect you forever." Those words left a coldness in the room I can still feel today. My mother wasn't the type to cry. Not even when she was overwhelmed, not even when life hit her the hardest. But as she reached for the box's tiny metal latch, her eyes filled with tears she didn't bother hiding. It struck me harder than anything she could have said. If something made her cry, it had to be serious. She hesitated, pulling her hand back as if touching the box would burn her. She said, "I should have told you when you were 15, but I was scared." And then another year passed, and another, and suddenly 10 years were gone. She wiped her cheeks quickly, as if embarrassed. Her voice cracked again. "I don't know how you'll look at me after this." When she finally opened the box, the first thing I saw was an envelope, yellowed from age, edges slightly curled. But what froze me in place was the handwriting, my name, written across the front. Large, shaky letters. "This was written when you were a baby." She didn't say by whom, but the silence made it obvious. My father, the man I'd never met. She had always told me he left before I was born, and that he wasn't someone worth knowing. But the way she stared at that envelope, she knew more. A lot more. She pushed the letter slowly toward me, then pulled her hand back as if she had given away a piece of her soul. My fingers hovered over the envelope, but I hesitated. I felt like opening it would change something I couldn't undo. My mother must have noticed, because she exhaled softly, almost in relief. "Before you read it," she said, "I need to tell you the real story of what happened between me and your father." She sat back, burying her hands in her lap. Her posture was rigid, like she was preparing for judgment. "Daniel, I didn't keep this secret because I wanted to lie to you," she said. "I kept it because I thought it would protect you, protect both of us." She looked away as if the memories themselves were painful to revisit. "But I was wrong. You deserve the truth now." Her voice softened when she began speaking about him. "Your father wasn't always the person he became," she said. "When I met him, he was kind, gentle, someone who dreamed big." It hurt to hear her talk about him like that, as if she still carried pieces of him in her heart. She said they were young, hopeful, and convinced life would work itself out. But something changed, something she wouldn't name yet. "He loved you, Daniel, more than anything. That part I never lied about." She looked at me with eyes pleading for understanding. But loving someone doesn't always mean they stay. She paused before continuing, collecting herself. "The trouble started before you were born," she said. "Your father got involved with people he shouldn't have trusted." She didn't describe them in detail, but the fear in her voice told me enough. These were people who controlled lives with a single threat. People whose business you didn't walk away from easily. He tried to get out. For us. For you. She squeezed her hands together. But leaving them came with consequences. I felt my stomach knot. Suddenly, the 10-year secret didn't feel like something small. It felt like something dangerous. Something that had forced her to rebuild our lives in silence. She described a night when I was just a few weeks old. A loud knock on the door. Voices she didn't recognize. Fear spreading through the house. My father holding me so tightly she thought he might break. "He knew they were coming for him," she whispered. "He didn't tell me everything, but I knew enough." She said he handed me to her with a look she never forgot. Half love, half apology. "He told me to take you and go. Not to ask questions, not to look back." And then he left. Walked into the darkness. Into whatever fate he had chosen. She said she never saw him again, and that night, she realized I had to become both your mother and your protector. After he disappeared, she went into survival mode. She moved towns, changed her number, cut ties with old friends. She promised him I would keep you safe, even if it meant hiding the truth. She looked exhausted as she spoke, like keeping this secret had taken pieces of her year after year. "But you're older now, and the world he tried to protect you from, those people, they're gone, or locked away." She touched the box gently, "which means it's finally safe for you to know everything." I stared at the envelope again, my heartbeat loud in my ears. The secret she hid for 10 years was now in my hands. The envelope suddenly felt heavier than it should have, as if the paper inside carried more than just words. I turned it over in my hands, tracing the edges, afraid that opening it would change the version of my life I had always believed. My mother watched me with a strange mixture of fear and hope, like she wanted me to know the truth, but was terrified of what it might do to me. "You don't have to read it now," she said softly, but I could tell she'd been waiting a decade for this moment. The room felt smaller, quieter. Even the rain outside seemed to silence itself, waiting for what would happen next. My mother leaned back, exhaling shakily. "There's more you should know before you read his letter," she said. Things I never had the courage to explain. She told me how she spent years hiding, moving from place to place, constantly looking over her shoulder. She never told neighbors much about our past. She never let strangers get too close. And all this time, I thought she was just private. "Every decision I made was for your safety," she said. "Even the ones that didn't make sense to you." I remembered the nights she double-checked the locks twice, sometimes 3 times. I remembered her waking up from dreams she never explained. Suddenly, it all made sense. She told me about a day when I was 6. We were waiting for the bus, and a man across the street kept staring at us. She claimed it was probably nothing, just a coincidence, but fear had gripped her so tightly that she took my hand and walked home instead of getting on the bus. "I thought he recognized me," she said, "from the old life." It was the first time I realized how deep her fear had run. A single unfamiliar face was enough to send her spiraling. For 10 years, she lived like that, anticipating shadows, interpreting every stranger as a possible threat. And she did all of it alone. She tapped the box gently. "There's something else inside," she whispered. Beneath the letter was a smaller, folded piece of paper, worn, creased, and barely held together. On it were 2 words written in my father's handwriting. "Forgive me." My mother's voice caught when she explained. He didn't know if he'd survived the night he left. He wrote that message before he walked out the door. She looked down, as if the memories still cut deep. He knew he was abandoning you, but he believed disappearing would save your life. Suddenly, the man I had imagined my whole childhood became a stranger again, someone who loved me but had no choice. Hearing all this filled me with a storm of emotions: confusion, anger, sadness, curiosity. Why had she kept so much from me? Why hadn't she trusted me with even a little bit of the truth earlier? "I wanted to tell you," she said, answering my silence, "but every year that passed made it harder. I didn't want you to grow up afraid of the world." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her that hiding the truth had done the opposite. It made me question everything. But she looked so fragile, so human in that moment, that the anger never reached my lips. Instead, I whispered the only thing I could. What happened after he left? She explained how she went to the police the next day, desperate to find out what had happened. But because they weren't married and had no official documents linking them, no one took her seriously. "They thought he just ran away," she said quietly. They didn't understand that he ran toward danger, not away from responsibility. With no help, she was forced to make a decision: stay and risk being found, or disappear. "She chose us," she said. She packed what little we owned and fled the city, starting a life that wasn't meant to be found. And for 10 years, she kept living in that shadow. Looking back, my childhood suddenly felt different. The strict rules, the sudden moves, the quiet birthdays. The way she panicked when I talked to strangers. I used to think we were just different from other families, but now I understood those differences were built on fear. You deserved a normal life, she said, but I could only give you a protected one. It wasn't bitterness in her voice, just regret. For the first time, I realized how much she had sacrificed for me. Not just time or comfort, but her entire sense of safety. She lived in survival mode for a decade because of a secret she never asked for. My mother confessed that 2 months before telling me the secret, she received a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, she said, but when she did, no one spoke. Just breathing, slow and steady. I froze, she admitted. All the old fear rushed back. She hung up, blocked the number, and told herself it was a mistake. But it wasn't. 2 days later, someone left a note on our doorstep, blank, except for a single line, "We remember." Her voice trembled as she recalled it. That moment broke the last piece of peace she had built. She realized the past wasn't as distant as she hoped. That note was the sign, she said. The moment I knew I couldn't keep you in the dark anymore. She explained that secrets are only protective as long as they remain hidden, and ours no longer was. She could no longer carry the burden alone. "You're old enough now to understand what we're up against," she said. Her eyes met mine with a seriousness I had never seen before. "If anything happens, you need to know the truth." Her words felt like a warning, a preparation for something that might be coming, something she feared would reach us again. I knew I couldn't delay it any longer. With a deep breath, I slid my finger under the flap of the envelope and opened it. The paper inside was thin, slightly yellowed, and filled with handwriting that felt rushed and uneven. As I read the first line, "My son, if you're reading this, then I didn't make it back," my throat tightened. My mother closed her eyes, bracing herself for my reaction. The letter wasn't just a goodbye. It was a confession, a warning, and a map to the truth she had tried to shield me from for 10 long years. For years, I thought my surname was just something ordinary, something given without meaning. But the deeper I followed the trail my father left, the clearer things became. My last name had been intentionally removed from documents, hidden from school records, and replaced with my mother's maiden name. Not because she wanted to erase him, but because it was the only way to keep me invisible. When I asked her why she never told me, she said quietly, "Because your father asked me to protect you, not your name." The truth hit harder than I expected. My entire identity, everything I believed was mine, had been shaped by a decision made long before I could understand its purpose. And as I looked at the old file with my original surname handwritten on the corner, I didn't feel anger. I felt a strange, calm acceptance. I finally understood why they had done it. 2 days later, I went to the small address written at the back of my father's letter. The only clue he had left, aside from his words. I expected an abandoned house, a locked door, maybe a dead end. But instead, an older man opened the door the moment I knocked, as if he'd been waiting for me for years. His eyes softened the second he saw me. "You look exactly like him," he whispered. He invited me inside and told me he had been my father's closest friend, the one who tried to warn him before everything spiraled. He wasn't part of the danger. He was the last person my father trusted. He handed me a small drive. "Your father recorded this the night he left," he said. My hands shook as I took it. Hearing my father's voice again felt like a final chapter I wasn't prepared for, but needed. Back home, I sat in the quiet of my room and pressed play. At first, only static. Then his voice, faint, tired, but unmistakably real. Daniel, my son, if you're listening to this, then I didn't make it back. I'm sorry for that. He spoke about the danger he faced, the choices he made, and how he wished his world had been safer so he could stay. But the part that stayed with me forever was the end. Your mother is the bravest person I've ever known. She saved both of us. Don't ever blame her for protecting you. When the audio ended, the room felt heavier, but somehow clearer. For the first time in my life, I knew the full story, not the version softened for a child, but the truth. I walked into the living room where my mother sat, waiting, nervous. I didn't say much. I simply hugged her. For 10 years of secrets, running, and fear, we finally had peace.